the item 14, where there is a Part A matter requiring a council decision, and that's easement over Old School Reserve. Paul, would you like to move that? And seconded by Yanni Johansson.
Sorry, I voted against it at Community Board. And so
sorry.
I don't wish to move this.
All right, okay, so would someone else like to move, second the... Yep, second pro forma, Phil Clearwater. Would you like to speak to that, please?
This is a section, a small piece of Old School Reserve at the very, very top, where there is a house that's had access, including their driveway to their house, for a few years, and this will be formalising that arrangement. It's not a piece of the reserve that is used by the public at all. It's right at the very top, next to a very steep section of ground. And there was a concern at the Community Board that there was no urgency over this, and that it could in the future limit the council's management of the reserve in some way. But it was recommended by the board to come to council.
Okay. Yanni, do you want to?
I really wanted to ask a question of staff.
Which staff covers this? Easements.
Okay, probably Joan, isn't it? Okay, thank you. In a general sense, I can understand that, you know, we need to provide access. But what I really want to understand is if, like what's happened with our board, where we've got Mount Pleasant School now raising really serious safety issues for their pupils, and us wanting to look at how we might put in a new footpath or change the roading to get, you know, less risk, we're constrained because some of the land is sold off, or some of the land has permanent easement. So what in the future, if there's a need for us to use this land, what rights do we have as a council to reacquire it, to you know, use it for some of the wider objectives that we would have? And I still don't quite understand why the staff are recommending we go for a permanent easement which guarantees rights forever versus like a licence to occupy or some sort of lease that if we needed to use it in future we could actually use it.
No, it isn't a staff for me, a question for me. I think it's a legal question that we can get the answer to and circulate to everybody. I understand the question.
So, I mean, again, because this is quite a legal process, I don't know, but you know, whether there's something that could be added to the contract that would enable us, if we needed to use this land in future, a way of actually being able to do so. I know that there's a wider issue around lots of the hill land that we do have for road reserve or old parks or recreation reserves, and we probably do need to start thinking post-earthquake about a bit of a strategic response to just selling it off or granting permanent rights to. But you know, the other concern I've got over this one is the precedent that this sets for other people with retaining walls, with a whole bunch of other access issues on the hills that we still don't know. But yeah.
So this states that the reserve will not be materially altered or permanently damaged, and that the reason for this is because the road frontage at 176 Major Hornbrook Road is considerably higher than the front of the property, making it difficult to get direct vehicle access to the property. So the Community Board, one member abstained, the other, you voted against, and everyone else supported it. So I'm just wondering whether we need to, you know, refer for additional legal advice, or whether we're happy to make a decision today. Paul?
I totally hear where Yanni's coming from in the case of the Mount Pleasant School with the access over a current, we're not sure if it's an easement or it's a permanent grant of use. But this particular one, we looked at all the aspects of the access in here and the other part of the reserve, and there looks like there would be very limited ability to do anything with this piece of reserve in the future. So that's why I think the board at the time voted in favour of allowing this easement to go across this piece of land. So I hear on one hand, yep, there are areas where in future we may need to have access, but this one here in particular, there does look like there's going to be no future use of this piece of land for any real purpose.
So I'm just taking some advice. So the community board has actually granted the easement. We're being asked to confirm that with the delegated authority that the minister has given us. So, I mean, we could refer it directly to the minister and not accept the delegation to make the decision. But I would rather take legal advice on that matter before I would refer it back to the minister, because he'll be wondering why the council hasn't made a decision on it. So, but you know, I think that, I mean, the trouble is that I have a sneaking feeling that this is quite a different issue from the issue that Councillor Johansson has raised. This is not like which school? Mount Pleasant. It's not like the Mount Pleasant school situation. It's quite different. That this road has always been used for access. Well, this driveway has always been used as access. It does locate partially over the reserve. The community board itself is happy with the easement to be granted, and it is simply we are simply giving the approval that the Minister of Conservation would normally give in a reserve matter, as has delegated that authority to the council.
If you look on page 68, what you can see quite clearly is this is very different to what was there before. That you're talking about a proposed formed driveway, so you're going to have a major driveway going through the reserve, whereas you can see the existing one ran a lot closer to the road. And I mean, that's fine if the councillors want to go down this path, but I guess the other question I would then raise from a legal point of view is, why not just sell this land to the guy anyway? Because for $8,000 for 115 metres square, it's a pretty good buy. But if permanently it's going to be regarded as a driveway, then why don't we just sell off this land? If we don't have any use for it strategically, then surely we should be getting more money than 8,000 for this land. But
Paul?
I think there's an issue around the reserve and selling reserve land, so the process to go through to actually sell it would be in itself quite expensive and would deem itself sort of pointless. So that's the reason I understand that we've gone down an easement rather than actually a sale and purchase.
Well, it seems to me that it might be better to defer the matter until the next meeting. Get some advice. So we'll just, yeah, I'll just defer the matter until the next meeting, and we'll receive some legal advice. All right. So
along those lines, then, Madam Mayor, if it did get granted at the next meeting, the community board was hopeful that the $8,625 compensation paid to the council could be tagged to the old school reserve. And we were wondering if there was a process for being able to do that.
Could we put a note here that we wish to seek advice as to whether we can tag the compensation paid to that purpose? You had an earlier one that...
That's right. The Heathcote Domain.
Heathcote Domain.
Yep.
I'm not sure whether we've ever provided you with advice in relation to that matter. So could we follow up on that? That's a separate matter, but we were, I can't remember when we looked at the Heathcote Domain. When was that?
Maybe even late last year.
Right.
Or very early this year. Or late
So
last year.
we looked at whether compensation paid in relation to a land
diversion.
Yeah, so in relation to Heathcote Domain, but we haven't. The community board hasn't heard back. So okay, we can check that as well. All right. So with the exception of item 1, the Part A matter, would somebody move that the report as a whole be adopted? Paul Lonsdale, seconded Jana Johansson. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much.
I did have one other matter in the
Oh.
district plan review.
Sorry.
Sorry, it's not in our minutes at this stage, but our community board and several others have in the last week passed motions asking the council for permission to have input into the district plan review. It's something that hasn't happened before, but as this process is different, community boards would like to be able to have some input, but we need council permission to do that. So we were hoping we would be able to work out a process for doing that.
We have a extraordinary meeting tomorrow to deal with the district plan review, so perhaps if somebody could make a note of, we would like advice to that meeting about community boards making submissions. I mean, I have not been involved in a district plan review before, and the one thing that would concern me would be multiple community boards with different views perhaps overriding each other, whereas a combined workshop might produce some sort of standard views across the generic issues, but then allow community boards to deal with specific issues in their areas, so without perhaps overriding those. So if we could get some advice about that tomorrow,
That'd be great.
I mean, I think that's enough time just to get some advice in front of the council tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you
So
very
we'll
much.
do that. Thank you. Riccarton Wigram Community Board, clause 50.